Philosophy.
That's just what I was interested in. I just found the law itself to be quite boring.
If you can introduce yourself, your name and what is your major?
Sure. My name's Tony. I study a PhD in law here.
You are studying.
Yes.
Perfect. You are the ideal candidate I was looking for. So, which country you are from originally?
China.
I'm from Pakistan. I think your parents will appreciate more when I said I'm from Pakistan. Okay. So, if you can come again, what is your subject in PhD?
Legal philosophy in law.
Legal philosophy in law. That's very specific. So, why you chose? I mean, you chose this or someone chose you?
No, I chose this. Yeah.
So, what was the procedure? Just think about that. We have someone in Pakistan who wants to apply for a PhD, and if you can take us through the process, please.
Sure. So if you want to apply for a PhD in law here in Cambridge, the first thing you can do is probably go onto their website and they'll tell you the basic requirements of what they expect their candidates to have to be eligible for a program. And then you send in the relevant materials. I think the most important aspect of the application process is to make sure you have a contact in the faculty. So typically for a PhD program, you have to have supervisors to supervise your research.
So you contact supervisor first?
So it depends. So if I did my master's here prior to doing the PhD here, so I had already kind of established a connection with someone who I'd like to be as my supervisor. And then I just kind of informally said, oh, I'd like to do a PhD. Do you mind being a supervisor? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And so I just sent in the relevant documentation and they just flagged me through saying, okay, that's fine, you can come through. But if you didn't do your LLM here or any kind of degree here and you have no contacts, then it'd probably be smart to contact a potential supervisor to get an idea of whether they'd be happy to supervise your research, whether they think you fit into the faculty. And this will be the case regardless of which faculty you're applying for. If it's a PhD program, you will have to have a supervisor. So having that kind of established connection first is kind of a better method than going in cold and not having an idea of who you want your supervisor.
Do you think if I send an email to any professor, they will answer?
Yes, so the professors here are generally quite generous with their time. Of course, if you frame your email in the right way and it's not going to come across as someone who's just wasting their time, but someone who is genuine, show that you've done your research and you're coming to them with a specific purpose and you rationalize why you chose them. I'm more than certain they'll be happy to kind of entertain that request.
Okay, so you will submit your grades and your CV. Or you wait for the supervisor to give the input. What kind of documents you have to submit?
So the documents will be the same on the website. It'll tell you the documents you need to apply. The supervisor is more so one of the documents you need to supply is a research proposal for your PhD program, and the supervisor will typically be someone you would contact before you submit that research proposal to get an idea of whether they think it's a viable project and more importantly whether they'd be happy to kind of supervise your work on that. And then if they say, oh yeah, this sounds good, it's fine, you can send it, and then that's probably a good sign. Yeah.
And what next for how many years this program continues, PhD?
It can vary between 3 to 4 years, depending on how much funding as well that you have. Some funding will only support you for 3 years, some funding is a bit more flexible and can support you for 4 years, but most people graduate within the end of the 4 years.
So 3 to 4 years?
3 to 4 years, yeah.
Okay, so I know it varies from student to student and supervisor to supervisor as well, but if we try to generalize or quantify the effort required per day, number of hours per day that a student have to put in.
To do their application or to study here?
To study here.
To study here. For a PhD, I think it's particularly variable because of the nature of the research and how you do your research. So some people, if they have a PhD that requires a lot of field work, so traveling to different countries and interviewing people, things of that nature, then their workload will just be determined on that basis. So like similar to what people who go around interviewing people would do, you'd have to kind of schedule with them and see when other people are available, fit your schedule to that. the kind of work that I do is more philosophical, and so that's just whenever I feel like I have a clear mind, I'll sit down for a couple of hours a day and think about my problem.
Couple of hours a day.
Yeah, a couple of hours a day, yeah.
And you can get a PhD from Cambridge by studying a couple of hours a day.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like philosophical work, you can't spend 10 hours a day thinking about it, because your brain just like thinking that deeply doesn't sustain that long, at least for me. So I only manage a couple of hours a day where I get some good thoughts down, jot it onto a piece of paper, and then come back to it the next day.
Do you know if you can do PhD without any funding? Can you fund your own PhD?
Absolutely, you can fund your own PhD. The difficulty is Cambridge charges quite a lot for international students.
Do you have any idea how much?
It's on the website. It varies depending on what program, but for the PhD it's like £15,000, £16,000. I can't remember, something around there. That's just for the course fee, and then of course if you're planning on living here, which most Cambridge degrees have a kind of residency requirements that they require you to kind of stay in the city, then you have living costs as well.
What are the living costs?
That again varies. You can live.
What are you paying?
Right now for myself, I'm paying about 700 in rent per month. And then for kind of general groceries and things like that, probably spending about $800 a month. Sorry, £800 a month. So £700 a month on rent, £800 a month on just like other expenses. Yeah.
So including internet and everything?
Including internet and everything.
So
about
1,500 is
a month, yeah.
£1,500, which if you convert it in a year, is around £18,000 per year, plus 18,000 tuition fees. So we are looking at 35 to 40,000 pounds.
Yes, minimum, yeah. And this is like I'm probably not the most I don't go around spending my money in places that I probably shouldn't be, and I try and like keep my spending down to a minimum. If you want to like be a bit more free with your money, then you'll probably require a bit more funds to.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about your degree. Why you chose? I know it's a personal question. You can tell me if you want to skip the question. Why you chose to do PhD? Why not just get a job after undergrad, start getting money, and get on with your life?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's this, as you said, very personal. Different people just have different kind of life goals. I did practice law for a number of years, and then it just wasn't my thing. So I decided to be an academic instead.
Oh, so you did work and came back?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you are going to be in academia now. Now the thing is, again, you are very specific about your subject, and I know PhD has to be specific, but why philosophy?
That's just what I was interested in. I just found the law itself to be quite boring. I was more interested in like the deeper questions behind what motivates certain laws and why certain laws can be seen as morally correct or morally defective.
So how is it going to help you in the practical life?
It's not really. I mean, that's why I have to look for a job in academia. I mean, I know my interests are entirely theoretical, and like the kinds of skills and areas of the law that you need to be proficient in order to have a good practical career do not line up with theory at all.
Have you watched Suits?
I have, yes.
Still you want to be philosophical?
Yes, well, I used to be a corporate lawyer for a number of years, like Suits, and it was not that fun.
Okay, so if you have a couple of hours doing your PhD, what do you do in the other time?
So depending on what kind of extracurricular things you want to be involved in, after a couple of hours of thinking, you might find yourself quite mentally drained, so you want to do other things to recharge. So go to the gym, do some exercise, go around town, hang around with people, go to the library.
I mean, for the PhD, do you get straight to the research part, or you have to pass some courses first?
So that's a great question. In the US, typically what they do is you require a student to do a couple of courses at the beginning, and then you get to the research part. But the difference is for the US programs, their PhDs tend to be quite long, so it's like 5 to 7 years. Here, because the degree is only 3 to 4 years, you skip the course part. Most people who come to the PhD have had a master's already in the relevant subject, and so the university will take that to be you having completed the relevant coursework that you need for the research, and then in the course of your PhD you just do purely research.
That's great from the day one. So if you like to, because in Pakistan and India, mostly students study in percentage system, not the grade system. If I were to say A star to anyone in Pakistan, most probably he'll say, well, what's that? So if we convert your grades in postgrad to percentage, approximate, we don't need to be accurate, how much that would be?
Sure. So at a minimum, if you want to get into the Cambridge Law PhD, I think they require you to have a distinction average for your marks, and a distinction average is equivalent to having like a average, and that's normally in the world around about 70 to 75%. And I say normally, I'm only familiar with the common law countries, so like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the States, Singapore kind of thing. So if you're around that percentage, you should be fine. And then beyond that, of course, the higher it is, the better it is.
Perfect. Okay, so Cambridge or Oxford?
In what respect?
Which one is better?
Overall?
Yes.
Probably have to say Cambridge.
And why is that?
Well, because I value the environment a lot nicer. In terms of research environments, they're more or less the same as a PhD student. Your interaction with the kind of physical institutions of the colleges and the various departments is not as strong as if you're an undergrad and you had to kind of go into class and do lectures every day and see your, academics every day, whereas for a postdoctoral student, like a PhD student like myself, I do most of my work at home, and I'll just come into the library every now and then when I want a book, but aside from that, it's really quite isolated and independent, and so given that, I just want to be in an environment that looks nice, and Cambridge looks nicer. So,
looks nicer, that's it?
That's pretty much it. In terms of everything else, I think most people think that they're on a par. I mean, they're in the same league, so you wouldn't expect there to be a huge difference.
Okay. Why everyone is on bicycle?
Why everyone is on a bicycle? It's really just the easiest way to get around in the town, I think, because it's a fairly small town. It's kind of a bit too cumbersome to have a car because the roads are quite tight, and it's also close enough that it's kind of inefficient to use a car. So a bicycle's just
and the bicycles, do they get stolen also?
Most of the time, yeah.
Most of the time.
I mean, if it's very rare to not have a bike be stolen every now and then. Yeah. But that's the case with most, I think, towns that have bicycles as the main form of transport.
Did you ever heard a story that your bike was stolen and you saw someone else riding it?
No, thankfully it hasn't happened to me yet. But
so these bikes are smuggled outside?
I think I'm not actually sure where they go. I suspect students just take random bikes. It must go somewhere, but yeah, they do end up in strange places as well. So. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because when I was walking here, I saw lots and lots of bikes. So I thought maybe I will ask this question to someone. And the accommodation, do we have any official accommodation of Cambridge?
So each of the colleges have their own college accommodation. So when you join, you'll be allocated a college. But separate from that, the university also has a official university accommodation site. And through that, they have university authorized locations as well. Yeah.
Let's conclude the interview by asking you another question that let's suppose I think here in this university we have masters. We don't have principals or dean. We have masters of the campus, right?
Yes.
So let's suppose you are made master of the college for a day or a week with unlimited resources, including financial and manpower. What is the one or two changes you would like to bring in?
That's a fantasy question. Well, being as a PhD student, I'm probably the most...
It's a philosophical question.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm most aware of the plight of the PhD students here, so I'd probably, if I had unlimited funding for a particular college, I just want to make sure that all the PhD students in that college are well supported, especially in light of the pandemic. I know a lot of students haven't been able to get extensions in their funding, and they're facing quite difficult circumstances now, so if I had a day, I think I'd be able to at least accomplish that in the day.
Perfect. I don't have enough words to thank you. Thank you so much. I dragged you from the road to here, and you were so nice and kind, and thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you.